Thank you for being with us, listeners. I apologize for my absence the past few days. I had to fly out and see that a good comrade was laid to rest. He was a decorated veteran. Well, not decorated, but he was a dishonorably discharged veteran who sacrificed his liver and the non-cirrhosis thereof to his country. And I can already hear you goddamn liberals out there saying, the Republicans consistently vote to defund programs for veterans and veteran resources. And you know what I gotta say? Well, it's you goddamn tattletales who made him like that in the first place. He never really recovered after. Well, look, if you're part of something like it's just about labels. If you're part of something like the Gulf of Tonkin, you say, I was part of the whole Gulf of Tonkin thing. And people are like, oh, well, thank you for your service. Let me buy you a drink. But, you don't have to say, I was part of a false flag attack that sent us to war under false pretenses and resulted in tens of thousands of American lives lost, an entire generation disillusioned with their government, and over 1 million of the Vietnamese killed. But you can't just say, oh, I was involved in burning a few huts. Straw huts! Very easy to burn. They're practically burning themselves. Blah, 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 whatever. But, try explaining to someone at a bar you were discharged after the rape of Nanking. Yeah, let me tell you, that's a real record scratch in the conversation. Things seem to end quite abruptly after that. But anyway, this one goes out to Joey T. This is from InfoWars by Marty Gottisfeld. 3/13/18. Debunking gun control using moon rocks, swimming pools, and 9/11. Oh, that's probably 9/11. And 9/11 is what it says. Beer, cannabis, the dreamers, and FBI incompetence also illustrative. Full disclosure, it reads, I am running against Elizabeth Warren for Senate, and my platform specifically includes gun rights. Good to know. Full disclosure, I am a patriot. I am running against a communist Satanist. Here we go. Before I add my 2 cents to the periodically vociferous gun debate, let me say that most Democrats like Warren don't actually care about victims of gun violence. No, they don't. When it comes to the recent tragedy in Parkland, Florida, they are literally being political ambulance chasers. So it helps to bear that in mind while scrutinizing the rhetoric. Excellent opening paragraph. Let me just say, my opponents, they don't care about you. They're bad people. Okay, it just helps to keep that in mind. I'm not going to do a bunch of, go into a bunch of lame examples. I just want you to keep that in mind. Or specifically, quote, it helps to bear that in mind. So, it helps to be sympathetic to my cause. All right, straightforward. To illustrate, remember in January when the Dreamers were the Dems' latest craze? Well, let's all go ask our closest respective DNC federal representatives how much their campaigns, super PACs, etc. raised by shutting down the government without actually helping the Dreamers. I'll start. Hey, Frauduhantes. Frauduhantes, how much did you bring in by scaring your voters with the DNC's last red herring? Well, I'm at it, Senator. How much of the money which you publicly claim to hate, but yet can't seem to stop privately hoarding, have you given to all those poor people who you're always talking about? But I digress. On to our gun control could never work. I want to point out, I also like how we structured this with questions, so, it's open-ended. But we can assume, the answer's none. How much of the money did you give to them? Well, it could be any amount. It could be all of it. It could be none of it. But, given the tone, I think we can assume it's none of it. First, prohibiting popular things has never been a successful endeavor in America. Just look at our country's history with alcohol and cannabis. That's exactly right. Prohibition does not work. By the way, there was a lot of traffic. I can't give away my location, but let me just say, somewhere nearby, President Trump was down here to oversee the wall that he's putting in. I just want to say that's going very well. You know, that this does not apply to immigration things. I mean, he doesn't specifically say that, but I just want to make that point. This definitely does not apply to immigration. So, how can these same politicians, who are theoretically in favor of ending the war on drugs because, among other reasons, prohibition is a failed social policy, be simultaneously in favor of trying the exact same failed experiment by banning something else for the exact same stated reason, which is supposedly to protect the public, and especially the children? You know that quote commonly attributed to Einstein about trying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? He also said not to look for logical consistency among hypocrites. Or rather, he probably would have said that if he had ever laid eyes on the DNC's bunch of elected phony officials. That's right. Boom. I like what he did there. All right. So, he gets you in. You know that quote about Einstein? Well, he also said this. So, it's social approval. It's the approval of an authority figure. But, you know, whatever. He didn't actually say that, but we all know he would have said that if in fact he was, you know, if in fact his beliefs were in alignment with mine. I mean, then obviously he would have said that. So yeah, what? What's your question? I don't get it. And I understand the average DNC voter does actually want to protect the children, and that they've been duped into believing that gun control would do that, even if some of their leaders happen to know better. I don't know. I think you're giving those devil worshippers a little too much credit, but anyway. It's clear to see that many of them want so badly for the gun control theory to work that they are, unfortunately, lose objectivity. That's right, they lose objectivity. See, I know about science. Some of them think they can combat the popularity of firearms in our culture by banning yet more things, like violent video games and movies, and that buyback programs can make a dent in the stockpile of over 300 million guns currently in circulation in America. I don't think either of those would work, especially layering prohibitions on top of other prohibitions. But even supposing just for a moment, and for the sake of argument, that these goals would be achievable, they still wouldn't keep guns out of the hands of the bad guys, even if firearms literally became as rare in America as moon rocks. That's right. Put it in simple terms. Bad guys. We know who's good and who's bad. They are against us. We are, ergo, good guys. Okay? Get it? How do I know, he says? Well, although we did send some moon rocks abroad as state gifts, it's illegal for a private citizen to own one here in the U.S. That's because it seems that after the Apollo missions started returning home with them, the folks at NASA who were entrusted with custodianship of the rocks were not above some earthly temptations themselves, and lunar samples started ending up in private collections here in the States. Oh! Makes me sick to think of Hillary Clinton in one of those Scrooge McDuck money bins just filled with our precious moon rocks. Then, due to the astronomical expense, astronomical, like an astronaut. It's funny. Then, due to the astronomical expense incurred in literally going to the moon to get the rocks, a well-intentioned Congress passed a law forbidding private individuals from having them and tasked NASA agents with tracking them down and returning them. And the NASA agents have been at it ever since. Again, I like how he's doing this. We don't need to waste our time with a bunch of fact-checking BS. He just says NASA agents have been at it ever since. Now, do we know anything about how many of these NASA agents are doing? Well, I mean, we don't know if it's been successful. I mean, presumably, if they're still doing it, it hasn't been totally successful. I mean, I'm going to guess that it has been 0% successful. Technically, it could be 99% effective, but, you know, I think we all know how stupid liberals are, so we can infer, you know, that it's doing bad. I just think of all the government money going to these NASA agents. Now, in addition to going up to space, these NASA agents tracking down moon rocks, I don't remember the exact figures, but I believe the amount of funding goes something like the top CIA agents, ATF agents, then NASA agents checking down moon rocks, and then I think FBI agents after that. So yeah, there's your universe. There's your universal health care right there. It's going down to the goddamn moon rock agents. Anyway, so prohibition does not even work for moon rocks, which no one can just brew, distill, grow from seeds, or manufacture with a 3D printer. Nor are there more than 300 million of them lying all over the country. You know what there are millions of lying all over the country? Democrats! And no one has a constitutional right to keep and bear moon rocks. Or alcohol. And yet, when they banned booze, they at least went through the formal process of amending the Constitution. Just reading the plain language of the Second Amendment and applying some common sense, as opposed to embarking on a judicial contortionist routine. And, listeners, I think we can all agree there's nothing more disgustingly liberal than a contortionist. Maybe like a French mime would be the one thing, but other than that, reveals that modern gun control statutes are grossly unconstitutional. By the way, the chant during both the efforts to illegalize alcohol and then later to re-legalize and re-regulate it was "Save the Children." Surprise, surprise. It turned out that making booze illegal actually made it easier for kids to obtain from the booming black market, where sellers weren't very discriminant about who their buyers were, and prohibition also led to more children working for organized crime syndicates, who weren't too picky about child labor either. Oh, when little Johnny shows up in his little suit and his little toothpick, and he's like a little mobster guy. At first it's cute. It's like, oh, look at a little Italian kid. But no, then he starts not being subject to child labor laws, unlike the rest of the country during that era, which was heavily supportive of, pushing barriers with regards to child labor. The Newsies, amazing healthcare. Great bennies for those kids. Further, if wealthy elites want to ban things that are dangerous to children, why aren't they talking about banning swimming pools? Yeah, you goddamn right. I've been trying to lead a campaign against swimming pools for years. Far more kids die in pools every year than from guns. There's no specifically enumerated constitutional right to a swimming pool either. And unlike guns, nobody has ever used a swimming pool in order to save their family from a violent offender. I think there was like a Harrison Ford movie where maybe he drowned someone, but that's, Well, maybe they won't move to ban pools because pools don't look as scary to them as firearms, and they haven't been indoctrinated to blindly hate pools like they've been conditioned to belligerently despise guns. Yes, you can belligerently despise something, but maybe they also won't ban pools because it would actually inconvenience them, and that's a higher price than they're willing to pay in order to save somebody else's child. You're goddamn right. It does not inconvenience them for gun control stuff because they don't like guns. However, they love pools, so therefore they don't want to get rid of pools. Alright, you guys following? Let's move on. Regardless, though, even if they could snap their fingers or wiggle their noses like Samantha from Bewitched and make all the guns in America hold on. That's, I think we gotta go back. I really want to say I love that he did not leave it with snap their fingers. Anyone can say snap their fingers. I really like that he added or wiggle their noses like Samantha from Bewitched, because it's important to remind ourselves. It's important to remind ourselves that Hollywood was putting out witch propaganda as early as the 1950s. And have they stopped? No. Every time you see a goddamn commercial for something, or every time you turn on your SNL and you got Hillary Clinton up there, yeah, that's Bewitched. She might as well be wiggling her goddamn nose. And make all guns in America disappear. That would likely only make the problem worse. Yes, it would likely only make it worse. The last thing we need is to force the psychopaths who go on these shooting sprees to get more creative. Right? After all, there wasn't a single shot fired during 9/11. That's right. So this is an important point. We don't want to force them to get more creative. Now, some people might be saying,
well, isn't that directly showing that your earlier premise was false? Because this is saying that banning the guns would actually make it harder for the psychopaths to get them, because that is a necessary, presupposition in order to get to the point where they would be getting more creative.
I would like to use my creativity to torture you in the most medieval fashion my brain can come up with. I think it will involve some sort of weasels and honey. Yes, weasels and honey. But anyway, I'm not going to address that, whatever. And meanwhile, everyone distracted by talk about an unlikely, impractical... Oh, let me just say. Exactly. So, it's going to make them more creative. Now, what's this evolution thing you sons of bitches are always going off about? I don't know. I didn't fucking go to some goddamn devil school, but I think the basic idea is you think things get better when conditions are difficult. So, there you go. We're going to create a race of super psychopaths. We need to make it as easy for them to get guns as possible, and then they'll get fat and lazy like those cockroaches when you just don't put stuff away. And meanwhile, while everyone distracted by talk about an unlikely, impractical, unconstitutional, and likely ineffective gun control effort, no one is focused on reforming the FBI so that next time it won't ignore multiple warnings about potential mass child murderer. Next time it won't ignore multiple warnings about a potential mass child murderer who could do even more damage without a gun. That's right, he could do even more damage without a gun. Now, is he going to qualify that with anything? No! He's just going to state he could do even more damage without a gun. I mean, it's roughly referencing that thing from before about making him more creative. Now,
isn't that a little bit of a stretch to say he could even do more damage?
You know it's a stretch when I put you on the goddamn rack and pull your arms off. Just like the Democrats seem to have forgotten that James Comey had more of an illegitimate effect on the election than the entire Russian Federation. That's what gun control and the Mueller, quote, investigation both have in common. They're both distractions, and thanks to them, the heat is off the FBI where it really belongs. It concludes with, Marty Guttersfeld is an Obama-era political prisoner and Republican Senate candidate against incumbent Elizabeth Warren. You can donate to his legal defense fund at freemartyg.com or his political campaign at freemartyg. Wait, is this guy actually in jail? Are you allowed to run for... Well, I'm just gonna say it was probably unjust. Seems like a good guy. I like his way of reasoning through problems, and I hope, it'd be interesting to have a governor in jail. Let's give it a shot. Look, it can't get any worse. Remember that? It can't get any worse. Minorities, vote for this guy. It can't get any worse. Your lives are terrible. Look at yourselves. Give it a shot. I mean, you love jail, right? You're always there. All right, Red Pill out.